All right, let's leave it at that. But let's also hear the statement, of course, that was made by the Cabinet Secretary recently in regard to the KDF involvement also in this particular election.
That these allegations that have been made by NASA are reckless. They are divisive. They are dangerous. They are intended to create fear and despondency within the citizenry of this country and within the Kenya Defence Forces.
The chain of command and management of the security sector is very organized. We are seeing very interesting things where our security system is being subjected to gossip and rumor mongering, which is not acceptable.
And we seek also to make it very limpid and clear for our viewers and our panelists this morning to tell us, especially how, because this has become very murky and we don't really understand also how KDF will be involved and, you know, to be part of this multi-agency security operation, of course, that they will be overseeing the security of election. First of all, I think our point of reference will be the Constitution. Right? Where is the military involved? For the point of reference from the Constitution, you can actually draw us there. I think it's Article 241. 241, yes. And if you go to 241 from the Constitution, I think all of you have 241 of the Constitution, yes. Or you have the copies of the Constitution also on your desk. I'm trying to flip over there to see what it says. And I think also she actually quoted 241. My Constitution seems to be stuck up. Oh, this is now embarrassing. Do you have it over there? Maybe you can read it for us.
Yes. Article 241, Sub-Article 3.
Sub-Article 3, yes?
Yes. The Defense Forces are, Paragraph A, responsible for the defense and protection of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic. Then there is Paragraph B, which is what is of concern to our discussion today, shall assist and cooperate with other authorities in situations of emergency or disaster and report to the National Assembly whenever deployed in such circumstances. Paragraph C may be deployed to restore peace in any part of Kenya affected by unrest or instability with the approval of the National Assembly. The focus of the kind of exercise that they would be involved in our discussion would be under paragraph. It would be under Article 241, Sub-Article 3, Paragraph B.
Shall assist and cooperate with other authorities in situations of emergency or disaster and report to the National Assembly whenever deployed in such circumstances.
Yes, that would be the focus. Because if you look at the other paragraphs, when you're talking about the issue of responsible for defense, that's simply the territorial integrity toward of enemies of the Republic. In Paragraph C, it's where you have certain parts of Kenya, for example, either under ongoing insurgency, and where it is felt the situation has escalated to a level now, it requires that insurgency be handled by the military rather than the internal or rather the police forces.
Okay. Yes. Let's see from, before we come to you, Captain Werunga, but Chair, first of all, this is subject to parliamentary approval. Isn't that the case?
Now I'll explain, because this is now an area where I can give an official IPOA position. Because again, there seems to be confusion regarding this issue.
Yes.
So I'm not speaking now, as, in a position of being speculative. I'm now giving a proper official IPOA position. Now, let me start with because even before we come to the military, because military should come at the tail end.
Yes.
We should not even be speaking about the military unless there's really, a chaotic situation in the country. Because, maintenance of law and order within our borders is the responsibility of the National Police Service. And we should be able to understand that the internal security is the responsibility of National Police Service. So we should start by asking ourselves whether the National Police Service is prepared to handle the internal security matters as we move towards the elections. Now, how does IPOA come in? Because again, I don't speak for the National Police Service. I can only speak in respect to our oversight responsibility over the National Police Service. Now, IPOA has critical departments, critical directorates. There's one that will deal with investigations where there are complaints, but we also have another critical department that deals with inspections, research and monitoring. This is pursuant to one of our mandates under Section 6 of the IPOA Act, which requires us to monitor police operations and to constantly check on what they are doing regarding the delivery of security service to Kenyans, which is different from the normal investigations that we do. So we have a full directorate that deals with that. This directorate, for your information, has human rights officers, it has ex-police, it has ex-military, some of them very senior, including even at the colonel level. So we have, and we also have researchers. So it has people who understand on day-to-day basis security matters and what's going on. And and by the way, I can tell you, Debarl, that we interact, the only work we do is to interact with the police daily. That is what we were established, to do. So we can confidently be able to say what is happening within the National Police Service. Now, we monitored police preparedness in 2013 when we were largely small as an institution because we were still growing. We've also been able now to monitor now. IPOA is largely, constituted and we have enough capacity, so we know what is happening and we've been able to monitor. I can say that 2013 they were not as prepared. But 2017, the National Police Service because this is something they've been doing for a long time. They didn't just start the other day. At least for the last 7 months or so, they started now serious preparations. And I can confidently say that they are well prepared, National Police Service. So they should be able to handle situations that would arise, but I would put in a rider and say that that is also largely dependent on how the public behaves. Because if the public does not behave and they create chaos, then obviously, regardless of the numbers that we have within the National Police Service, regardless of the preparedness of the police service, there will still be a problem. So there has to be a correlation between the public behavior and the National Police Service preparedness. That is one thing. But legally, in the event the police were to be overwhelmed, would they have would there be a possibility of them asking military to come in? Yes, because the law allows that. Now, when you look at that Article 241, you must also read it together with the Kenya Defense Forces Act, number 25 of 2012, because that is the one now. You see what the Constitution does? It provides the general provisions, but in terms of the details are normally provided under the Act, the enabling legislation, which is now enacted by Parliament to supplement what is provided for under the Constitution. There are very elaborate provisions from Section 31 up to Section 35 of Kenya Defense Forces Act number 25 of 2012 that provides on the stages on how the military would be involved. There are two instances. There's the one that Captain Wanderi has said, the one that where they would go and restore peace and, in case of unrest and instability.
Yes.
Now, that one is different. That is the one that requires parliamentary approval because when they go under those circumstances, they are moving as military. And the person who is in charge of command and control at that time is the CDF, Chief of Defense Forces. But where they move to cooperate or to provide assistance to the National Police Service, that's a different situation. Because under the KDF Act, there's a section that specifically says that they can move in to assist National Police Service. Now, when they move under those circumstances, they do not go as military. They move in, and the person who is responsible for superintendence of the operation is the Inspector General. They only assist, it's a backup. It has to be on the request of the Inspector General. He'll put in a request to the National Security Council. If National Security Council approves, then they can be deployed. All that the Cabinet Secretary is required to do is if that continues for more than 7 days, she has to inform Parliament. And if Parliament is not in session, all she needs to do is just to write a letter to the Speaker of National Assembly. But when it comes now to that joint operation where the military are involved, they are deemed to be police. In fact, the section in the KDF Act is very clear. it says that they are deemed to be police officers and they will be subject to the same liabilities as a police officer. That means that at that moment, IPOA, if they misbehave, would also be there looking at them as police officers, and they will be investigated and action taken just like you take against the other National Police Service member.
So they will be subject also to your oversight.
Yeah, they will be subject to also to oversight, because that time they are police. They are not military. Remember, the person who is commanding them and the person who is leading the operation, who is in charge, is the Inspector General. It is now not the CDF, because they are not moving as military. They are providing just backup, and the person even on ground, the commander, will be a National Police Service member.
Okay.
So then
I think even that in itself, don't you think then it portends also confusion? Because we've had also these cases, we take it back to Westgate, the Reke team, and of course the police, they were not seeing eye to eye on who also to actually pick the instructions.
I'll also explain to that. Right. I'll also explain to that. Yeah. That's why the same section from 31 up to 35 is very clear, that there should be some there should be training. When the military are being deployed, they have, because to avoid a scenario like the one that you've indicated, yes, where there's that confusion. And that will explain to you why there was this Operation Dumisha Utulivu. Mm-hmm. You remember now the one that was, and it was an open, incidentally, I don't understand why this confusion regarding that operation, because there was nothing secretive about it. We as IPOA were aware about it. We saw the documentation regarding it as part of our mandate. Mm-hmm. It was a normal operational preparedness opened in Embakasi Garrison by the deceased minister, mm-hmm, involving all these players, bringing them together, you know, where you are telling them that in the event that this kind of a scenario, this is what would happen. If, you know, we should start by saying that we shouldn't reach that level, because we are presupposing that there will be chaos, and I don't think there should be, and I don't think there will be.
Fantastic.
But in the event there will be, that's why they were undertaking this joint preparedness in compliance with the law that requires them to prepare themselves.
Right. And you've said very well, Captain Werunga also wanted to respond, because we don't, I don't know if they have this intelligence that, yes, there's going to be chaos or not, right? but actually subjecting, you know, the boots on the ground, especially right now, and you've indicated that, yes, you're fully prepared. The National Police Service is not as, you know, it will not be caught flat-footed as it was in 2013. Now we're coming fully prepared. Why then do we need the military? If you have the full force, you know, of the police service, why do we need the military on this? Because I think this is creating bugbears and fears. If we see, you know, men in fatigue also on the ground as well, and people have really indicated this, I don't want to see men on the,
I think
with fatigue on the ground.
Let's go by the law. I know I've worked with Mr. Macharia for a long time. He's one of the best legal minds we know. But look at the 241 in the Constitution.
Yes.
It is actualized by the KDF Act. And this is what it says. 32, deployment of defense forces to restore peace in Kenya.
32?
32.2. Whenever defense forces are deployed to restore peace in any part of Kenya, pursuant to subsection 1, the chief of the defense forces shall be responsible for the administration, control, and overall superintendency of the operation. Let's go down to 33, sub 3. Whenever the defense forces are deployed pursuant to subsection 1, the Inspector General of the National Police Service shall be responsible for the control and overall superintendency of the operation. Now, who decides who is going to be in charge of that operation? Is the Commander-in-Chief. And he issues in writing who is going to be in charge of that operation. Now, under the interagency framework that the government has established, KDF now works with other security organs to be informed and to be ready and to understand the operational mechanisms of that plan, so that in the event that the national police is overwhelmed, then they have the capacity, they have the knowledge, they have the know-where, how they can move in and assist the national police. So the law is very clear on what it states. And until and at that time, the commander-in-chief stipulates in writing who will be in charge of that operation. Then what we are seeing even in Lamu, although we are not privy to the command and instructions given, it becomes wavy who is in charge, and therefore it becomes very difficult for us to take people to account on what actions they need to do. Mr. Macharia here, I think I'll request, I know they might not share with you, but it's important that we know who is in charge of that operation.
Yes.
And the law is very clear here. It states very clearly, in the event that they are deployed, the cabinet secretary must inform who is in charge. You're supposed to be in charge, either the inspector general or the chief of defense staff. Let me just finish briefly on that one.
Yes.
If they are deployed and parliament is in recess, the president, who is the commander-in-chief, must inform the speaker within 7 days.
To recall?
No, of the operation, so that the speaker can recall parliament to confirm that. Now, the problem here is we are going into an election. There's no parliament, there's no speaker.
Yes.
What happens? Our two lawyers can tell us, because now within those 7 days, in the event that they are deployed, the parliament will not be there. So here, where does the president report to? National Security Council? That is where I don't understand. But the law is very clear. It actually speaks on the constitution, and it stipulates how the defense forces can be deployed. And under the current framework of interagency, framework of working together, the military is within the law to be deployed. Now, for them to come up with a contingence plan, they can have their own internally under what we call the Military Assistance to Civilians, called MSC. MSC is a Military Assistance to Civilian Authority, which is a component by itself within the Kenya Defense Forces that actually makes the military prepare itself to be ready to assist civilian authorities. So there are so many things that the military goes through to prepare itself to assist the police. But here the law is very clear. We don't know who is in charge, for example, in Boni, whether it is the Inspector General or it's the military. And this is where it must be very clear.
This is where we need to be very clear.
Yes.
Because I think we don't want to end up where we were in a very murky ground, and we don't know who's giving the command, and we know there's friendly fire because there's no clarity, right? And I think these are very probing questions that we should be asking on this particular show today, so that we get clarity first of all. Because it seems also what you are telling us this morning, also from the chair, it flies in the face of the Article 32 that you brought, right? Yeah. That this is expressly if it is for the purposes of maintaining, cooperating with the police service, as in we don't have to get maybe a parliamentary approval, and who will be in command, because you say this will be under the remit of the Inspector General of Police. Even the Army will be under the remit of Inspector General of Police. Is that the case? Let's get clarification.
Let me first respond to this, because we need to read the law. The law is not read in pieces. If you need to read, to interpret the law, you read the whole section.
Yes.
Captain Werunga has read 33.2. Let me refer him to 33.1. 33.1.
What page is that?
Yeah, no, that is not in the Constitution.
Oh, this is the Act.
But he simply repeats what is in the Constitution. I said 241, sub-article 3, paragraph B says, shall assist and cooperate with other authorities in situations of emergency. That's what the Constitution says. Article 33, the subheading, and it's very important when interpretation in law, because we are practitioners in court. You look at the subheading, deployment in support of national police service. Very clear. That's a subheading. The defense forces may be deployed in a joint operation and in support of the national police service in situations of emergency and disaster. And if you listened to Mr. Macharia here, he was referring to those kind of situations. We are not talking, when we are talking about restoring peace, in security analysis, there is a level you say the peace and security has deteriorated to such a point that now we deploy superior firepower, like we did in Mount Elgon. And that is a different situation, and that's why there is a National Security Council. Let me finish, Captain
Just go down, just read down the whole thing.
Yeah, but it also says, whenever the defense forces are deployed pursuant to subsection 1, okay, to support the police, the Inspector General of the National Police Service shall be responsible for the administration, command, control, and overall superintendence of the operation. That means then we come to what Mr. Macharia has alluded to, that the people who are deployed to assist, if there will be, and that is that we put the word, if there will be an emergency beyond the capability of the National Police Service, will be under the command of the Inspector General. And that is why under Section 34, then they are considered as police officers. In fact, the only power they do not have is the power to arrest and investigate. And if they do, they would have to do that in conjunction with the National Police Service.
Let's go to 32.
Let me also say something.
No.
So that we end the confusion.
Wanderi, go to 32.
Yes, but I also want to
read 32 before we go to 33.
I have read 32 and 33.
No, just read to the audience so that Kenyans can get what it says.
32 is in reference to sub-article
just read it.
Of the Constitution, which is at sub-article
read
C.
Read it.
Yes, it says may be deployed.
No, the act.
May be pursuant to Article 241(3)(c). And that is why I say our discussion
let me read it.
Our discussion here should be at the 241(3)(b).
Debarl is very important. 32, deployment of defense forces to restore peace in Kenya. 32(1), pursuant to Article 241(3) sub C of the Constitution, the Defense Council shall deploy the defense forces in any part of Kenya affected by unrest or instability to restore peace upon approval by the National Assembly. 32(2), whenever the defense forces are deployed to restore peace in any part of Kenya pursuant to subsection 1, the one that is above, the chief of the defense forces shall be responsible for the administration, control, and overall superintendency of the operation. We are speaking about the same thing, restoration of peace.
We are talking about two different things.
Okay.
There are two different things.
Okay, I'm none the wiser because
yes,
you are the legal
man
minds here, you've been in the defense force.
There are two different things.
Can we get just clarity? Just 2 minutes, we close up on this and we get, you say we move to also the death of Chris Musando.
Yes. In the law, there's no ambiguity and there's no confusion actually in the law. That's why I say that this from section 31 all the way to section 35.
But it can be, the interpretation also can be subject to
No, Debarl.
You cannot read one section.
No, let Macharia just speak.
Okay,
let me clarify.
The only thing, Debarl, is Macharia use a layman language. So Kenya can understand.
Let's simplify it. I'll simplify it. The law provides for two scenarios. Yes. That's what I said. The section 31 all the way to 35 provides only for two scenarios. There are no other scenarios other than two. Scenario 1 is the one where if there is instability, there is a total breakdown of peace and order, and this instability, unrest, what you'd call, in any part of the country, then in that scenario, the military can be deployed as military, where they go to restore peace and order in that part of the country.
Thank you.
Not as part of the National Police Service. Under those circumstances, they are under the command of the Chief of Defense Forces.
Yes.
That is now the General Mwadede.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with the police, they go as military. In such a situation, it requires parliamentary approval. There's no doubt about that. Then there's scenario 2. Good. Scenario 2 is where the National Police Service themselves request the military to come and provide assistance. That is now cooperation, to cooperate with the National Police Service in the event of emergency or disaster. If the police themselves feel that we are overwhelmed, this is an emergency, this is an issue, we need the assistance of the military, all that the Inspector General needs to do is to make a request to the National Security Council, not to the President. The National Security Council, and remember in the National Security Council, there are various players in it. Make that request. If National Security Council approves, then the military can be deployed to come and help the police. And in that case, there's no issue of command because it is very clear that the person who is the commander is the Inspector General. The Inspector General is the one in the command. You don't need to say that there should be any other document talking about the command because the law itself says it is the Inspector General.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's leave it at that.
And that does not require parliamentary approval.
It does not require.
Debarl, I think this is the law. Let me read it because Kenyans are listening. Just listen, let me finish.
Disagree with you.
Let me read, then we disagree. No, just let me read briefly, then we disagree. Under what Mr. Macharia is saying, where the deployment under that section has been discontinued, the blah, blah, blah. Service in support of National Police Service and other authorities as contemplated in what he has just said. But here it says also, now I'm even, 34 3B, Mr. Macharia. It says, report to the National Assembly on the deployment.
Okay.
Yes, report, not approval.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't say it's approval, but you must report to the National Assembly.
Yes, and how do you report?
You
report under Section 8 of the Act, which says
we are not arguing here. We are just trying to follow the law.
Come to Professor Noah.
If the National Assembly is not in session, so we are agreed they can be deployed. And yes, if the National Assembly is not in session, after the 7 days, in the first 7 days after the deployment of the Defense Forces, as contemplated in the law, then the Defense Council shall, through the President, provide the information required in that subsection 3 to the National Assembly. So it is right. It's only,
but that's what I just said.
That's the
what is
provide
the
information.
We are all in agreement. We are all in agreement in this discussion.
Yeah, there's no.
And one is, the military can be deployed and then report after 7 days
to Parliament.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear from Professor Noah Midamba. I think you've been also fairly...
Simply put, in the best national interest, was the country right to prepare both KDF and the National Police in the event of eventuality? And the answer to that, I think, would be very clear. Now, was that information communicated to all the people concerned?
Yes.
I think that's where the problem lies.
And this is a clarification that we were seeking, because I know this is a likely scenario, maybe also coming from the Kenya Defense Forces as well. And I think also we had the same in the likelihood, whoever will win, be it the Jubilee side or the NASA side, there has to be preparation. Because eventuality will come, or for any eventuality that is likely to occur, that even if someone wins maybe from the other side of the divide, still guys will revolt. Even if it's NASA, they've won, people will celebrate and they'll be still. So there's a likelihood that they have to prepare. But this particular information was not very clear in 2013 about the military involvement in the elections as this particular year of 2017. Why is that so? It was really under wraps in 2013, but now we have cases and we have also leakages of documents as well. Why is there this discernible difference with the 2013?
Debarl, I can confidently say that from the time I was in the armed forces or the defense forces now, there is always preparation and a contingency plan. The difference is our society is evolving and every day we are developing. In 2002, because I was there were those plans and preparations and very clear operational directives on what would happen and the level of preparedness required in the event that we were then required to assist the police service. Now remember, in 2010 there is a new constitution which requires a bit of openness. There is greater democratic space. In 2013, more often than not time, when the military prepares its own operations, it does it quietly without involving, because they are not part and parcel, as Mr. Macharia said, of the civil administration. They are a different administration. So when they prepare and keep it internally. But this year, there was a difference. Because Operation Dumisha Utulivu was made a public issue. And the late General Kaiseri publicly said, yes, this is to make sure, and because of the constitutional requirements, in the event that you have to do that, then you have to train members of the defense forces so that they can comply with the law. And that is why you see in the Bakassi it was open. Media were invited. And you could see in the way you showed clips here of the way they would cooperate. Because then they would not be under their own command. They would be under the command of Inspector General, and as Mr. Macharia said, then they would be required and they would be subject to the law as police officers. And you have to train them. The other thing I want to say is that generally, when you are deploying defense forces in any country, they are subject to two types of law. They are subject to the national law and international law. The international obligation does not end. Mr. Macharia, you know that, under the conventions, the 1948 Geneva Conventions, 1977 protocols additional there to the responsibilities of defense forces does not end simply because they are deployed under the National Police Service. They can still be tried even in courts outside Kenya. And that is the reason every commander of the defense forces will have to prepare his men, his officers, men and women, so that in the event he deploys them, they are very clear on the rules of engagement. They are very clear on the requirements of the Constitution, the law, and those conventions. Finally, when you deploy these people and they go out there, whatever they do, their responsibility has no limitation in terms of territory and in terms of law. You can still be tried for those crimes many, many years after. And this is why I know, and I can confidently say that there is no member of Kenya Defense Forces who can agree to be used to subvert the will of the people. They understand these obligations too well. But as you say, they must prepare, because you do not know, the military does not prepare that only side A can win. They prepare for both sides. Yeah. And in both scenarios, they look at scenarios. They can look at whatever documents we were seeing them addressed to the, if they were, I've said I have issues with them. If they are addressed to the commander of the Eastern Command of the Kenya Army. The Kenya Army has two commands. It has Western Command. So you do not also not know what they contemplate in Western Command, which covers the area from west of Nairobi, Kiambu, towards Nakuru, and the rest of the western part of Kenya. So they will prepare for the two scenarios. Either side can win.
All right. Let's just have you say, of course, the rush of tweets. We can see them, and Usha, she's standing by, and then we'll get closing remarks also from our panelists as well. Usha?
Guys, I have been sampling some of your tweets, and in the interest of time, I'm going to have to rush through them. I do have to say, however, some of the tweets, I couldn't load some of the tweets because they were of a rather sensitive nature, and that is sad. So moving on to the tweets that I did load, we have Karo, who says, some statements create fear, tension, and alarm in the country. We also have Cornelius, who says, what will be the fate of KDF spokesman if indeed the documents are found to be untrue? We also have Rutherford, who says, photocopied or not, we are concerned with the authenticity of the contents in the documents. We also have Mwangi, who says, I don't think the Kenya police is ready for the elections. We also have Paul, who says we should focus more on having a free, fair, and credible election. That will give us the peace we so much want. We have Roger, who put up this picture which says, stop tribalism, one tribe, one Kenya, tuache ukabila, very true. We also have Sidwaka, who says, as much as we talk of our defense forces being professional, we should ask ourselves, are the recruitments professional? I think because that is where indeed it begins. We have Wilson, who says we all have to be sober. Speculations over and over again herald doom and torment to people of Kenya. Peace, peace, peace. And finally, we have Betty, who says Kenya is one. I think that's a positive note to end on. So keep the conversation going. Hashtag AAM Live NTV. That is how you can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Debarl.
All right, thank you. Many thanks indeed, Usha. And also, just maybe to weigh in, also, we had John Githanga as well, Usha. He says Kenyans are in the dark concerning the state's internal operations. There is a wide disconnect between government and wananchi. Also, we have Geoffrey Mwikamba saying, why did they decide to deploy KDF just after Parliament is in recession? And Peter Ongeti is saying, or is asking, ask how does an election become an emergency? Could the law contemplate on the collapse of buildings and bridges? I don't know how that is related, but of course he's asking, how can an election be an emergency? Maybe as we're giving our closing statements, and I'll give this chance to, of course, Professor Noah Midamba as well, and also Mustafa as well, and from our other panelists. Let's just weigh in on this. You think this is an emergency, or this is just taking, I think measures, strict measures, even as we're heading towards a general election? Professor.
I think we spend a lot of time on talking about the law and what is required and what's not required. So I'd like to put that aside in my closing statement and says Sir Winston Churchill, the famous British Prime Minister, once said, to build a nation takes slow and laborious task of years. To destroy can only take a thoughtless act of a single day. Friends and fellows Kenyans, we come to the last part of this long, hard-fought campaign. All the dances, all the promises are now over. It is important for everyone to vote your conscience so that we can have a fair, credible election and prove the rest of the world that Kenya is on the way for development.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from Chair Macharia.
My closing remarks would be that first and foremost, let's not be preoccupied with thinking that there will be chaos. I mean, all we need to do is just to vote for whomever we want, and the matter ends there. But at the same time, we need to have also some trust on the various institutions. And for me, I'll speak about the security organs. That IPOA was created to be a bridge between the public and the National Police Service. So when we are speaking based on what we know, not speculation. When we say that we believe the police are prepared. But I put in a rider and say that the police preparedness will be rendered irrelevant if the public itself does not behave. Then we should also remember that the National Police Service has the face of Kenya. Let's not think that members of the National Police Service, because there has been insinuation that they can be used for certain, illegal activities.
Yes.
If indeed that were to happen, for us, IPOA would isolate that member of the National Police Service as an individual and deal with them accordingly in accordance with the law.
Thank you.
And we believe that they are professional enough. We believe that KDF is professional enough to do the right thing. And let's just maintain peace in the interest of our country.
Right. Thank you very much, Chair. Captain Wanderi.
Yeah, Debarl, personally, I want to tell our viewers and assure them that members of the Kenyan Defence Forces are properly trained. They understand their legal, constitutional, as well as international law obligations. And I can say confidently, because it's something I have seen being done, that the members of the Kenya Defence Forces would never interfere in any way to subvert the will of the citizenry. They take the command from the civilian authorities elected by the people. They protect the legitimacy of any win on either side. And they have lived up to that from 2002, from 2007, up to 2013. They will always protect the legitimacy of the person the people have willed to lead them.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mustafa.
Debarl, preparedness is very important for any country to be able to address any instability or insecurity that is going to come with the kind of elections that we normally have in Africa. And unfortunately, the preparedness of the security agencies has been spun. There's a lot of fake news that are coming with that, and people seem to be misunderstanding the joint interagency trainings that have been going on. I just want to tell Kenyans that this election is not going to change much. It's not going to change Kenyans' life. It is a part of a process. It is part of a process that if we manage it well, then it will start contributing to the change of the life of Kenyans. It is not worth risking anybody's life in terms of throwing stones or causing chaos.
Right. Captain Werunga.
I just want to inform Kenyans that the law allows KDF to be deployed. We are not saying they are being deployed with this document. Whether it is fake or true, this was just a document in preparation. And therefore, they are within the law to assist the civil police to maintain law and order in the event something erupts during or after the elections. Number two, we also know that KDF is a fairly professional outfit in this country. Is, I think, the only outfit in this country we can competently say is very cohesive in how it looks at Kenya as a country and how it understands its mandate on what to do to protect this country.